Hi, guys. Welcome to the show. My guest today is John Shegerian. So, John is the serial social entrepreneur responsible for co founding Homeboy Industries, financialaid.com, Engage, and many other impactful organizations. He currently serves as co founder, chairman, and CEO of ERI, and ERI is the largest recycler of electronic waste in the US, which is pretty cool. We'll learn more about that shortly. John, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, David. Thank you for having me today.
It's really cool to have you on. And let's hear about who are you in terms of your background. Tell us about your leadership journey so far, as much or little as you'd like to share.
Yeah, I was born in New York City, and my mom was a social worker, and dad was an entrepreneur. So when I look back, and this is only in retrospect, how I even got on this journey is, when you have two strong parents that really are committed to what they're doing, you take social worker with entrepreneur, and you get social entrepreneur, and that's really what was really my humble beginnings in Queens, New York.
Wow, well, that's very cool. And it's interesting when guests talk about their upbringing and the influence of parents. And we had this recently on an interview. I'm a great fan in terms of leadership of actually going there and considering as a leader what impact did my parents have on me because they're the most formative people in our lives for most of us. What were the biggest things that shaped you as a leader that you would say are attributable to your parents and both the good and the bad, if depending on what your experience was.
Yeah. Both were very curious. My mom was very curious. She's probably can be termed a bibliophile, someone who's constantly reading and always wants to know and learn. So that was great. And my father was a fixer. He would see voids in white space in the marketplace and want to create solutions. So it was really a nice mix of curiosity and learning, both formal and informal educational learning with the ability to look for voids in the marketplace and things that need to be fixed and holes that need to be filled and creating commercializable and size and scalable business opportunities to fill those voids. And that was my
Mm.
father's strength and my mother's strength on the education side. And it was really a very positive mix. They got divorced when I was very young, but they both were very big in my life. And as was my grandparents, all immigrant hard workers, and that DNA of coming to a country where you don't know anybody and you have to be resilient and you have to be tough and you have to be flexible and adaptable, though that never leaves you. And even though I was born in this country in the United States, that DNA is embedded in you, and not only by blood and genetics, but also by vision, by watching the immigrants that came over and watching how hard they worked and how much they sacrificed for our better opportunities. It really set my brother and myself off on a very good path to want to succeed and want to honor all the sacrifices that they made.
Mm. So that's really interesting to hear the impact. And it sounds like your dad was, very committed and probably ambitious and entrepreneurial in his own way, which sounds like
Yeah,
you've certainly picked that characteristic up.
yeah, and it's interesting. My parents were so different, and it was probably for the best they got divorced because even to this day, my mom, she loves talking about any book or anything in the news or the media. She's 84. She just retired, and
Mm.
my dad has long since passed. But my mom still is unbelievably curious, reads all the time, challenges me all the time on current events and what's going on, and recent media events and important issues, political and otherwise social. And but she doesn't really understand the world of entrepreneurship, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
They were that much different, but when you put it together, that it could be a very happy balance. And for me, it's a happy balance of curiosity and business that I really get to enjoy.
Yeah.
Capitalism and always learning,
That's
always wanting to learn.
two really mutually beneficial characteristics, as you say, to come together in one. So, John,
Yeah.
What about your organizational leadership journey before ERI? What can you share with us about that?
Yeah. It started off at a very young age. My in the beginnings, my parents were very they like most young parents, we didn't have much. And I started working at a very young age at 10 years old, sweeping floors, and got to be very close with my boss in a dry cleaner in the United States, and learned a lot from him about hard work and making money and also investing money. And I kept finding mentors along the way. No one is a success on their own. No one is a quote unquote a self-made man or woman. And so when you're lucky enough to find mentors along the way to help guide you, push you, pull you, pick you up when you fall down and you crash and burn. And that's sort of been my journey. I could literally track it. It's very, very clear now that I'm 61 years old, from my dry cleaning days in Saul Jacobson, who was my first boss and an amazing mentor and very caring human being, to my days of horse racing. I was a harness race trainer and driver, one of the youngest ones in North America. Harness racing is very, very popular. I know in Australia, I bought a lot of horses from down under, and also was very popular back then in the United States. And Mike Gagliardi and other mentors I had, racing horses and also tending for horses. Horses were a great experience in my teen years, David, in that, you can't be a good leader and in absentia. You have to show up, and horses are a great example. Whereas if you have a business and you don't show up, that's one thing. You're missing from the business. Your team is missing their leadership and missing their direction. But when you don't show up to your barn when you're 11 or 12 or 13 years old or 14 years old or 17 years old, you have a lot of horses that start going hungry, that start, or don't get the care that they need. And these horses are not cheap horses; they're race horses. And so I learned very early that you have to show up every day, and you have to be on time, if not early, and you have to do what you promise you're going to do. Otherwise, everything around you will suffer. And so that was a great lesson. And then that went on until I worked for my father for a while, and he had a very large printing company. Plus, he also was the first person to bring windmills to North America. He created a company called Windmaster back in the late 70s. And that was a great experience. I learned about the environment and that there wasn't just one way to do things. He was already challenging the fossil fuel based energy industry by bringing wind to America and creating wind farms. And so that set a great impression on me. And onward I went into real estate and the law, and all my bosses were mentors. So really what I learned, David, is I was never really the smartest person in the room. I was smart enough, but I was always curious, and I was always I'll outwork anybody. And I was always the first to show up and the last to leave. And that's what set my career on a great path in terms of leadership. And so I've been very lucky along the way to have so many great leaders that cared for me, that pushed me, that pulled me, and that also really picked me up whenever I fell down.
And really cool to hear you calling out the value of mentorship and how generously and passionately you describe all your bosses from the very first, sweeping floors at the dry cleaners. You referred to your boss there as a mentor, and that's amazing as well. So I want to make sure we leave a good amount of time to understand what have you built now? What do you give your energy to now, John, at this point in your journey, which, as I understand, it's ERI, and tell
Yeah.
us about that, and tell us, just linking with what the story you just told. Was there a gap there where you left off before ERI was founded, or did that link into ERI beginning? What's the story there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I moved from my wife and I lived in Beverly Hills with our children. In 96, we moved to Fresno, California, where her parents were from. And I opened up a brewery. And when I opened up that brewery, I realized that wasn't my last stop, but it was a great way to meet people. It was a restaurant and brewery. And the young guys that made my t-shirts at this restaurant and brewery became very good friends of mine. There were two brothers named Matt and Mike O'Brien, and they knew a lot about computers because their dad was one of the first importers of computers in America. And I knew nothing about computers. And they kept telling me we had to get involved with this new world, this internet world back in 96, 97, 98. And I was like, I don't even understand how to turn on a computer. I don't understand what you mean. but they coached me and they taught me, and we talked a lot about it. And finally, in 1998, we started in the back of my brewery a little company called financialaid.com. And everybody laughed at us, and every VC threw us out of their office. And we mortgaged our homes, and we went into debt. And we literally started this little .com that everyone predicted would fail. And we got very, very lucky, David. The three of us stuck together and stuck to our mission and stuck to our vision. And it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And we moved it down to San Diego. And before you knew it, we grew one of the largest .coms starting in '98, which is the year Google was founded. And we democratized the student lending business. And what we learned is, what we don't know, we can learn. And what we learned is, just because someone tells you no doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And what we learned was, even when it's a brand new industry and a brand new world, which the whole internet world was then, again, there's still opportunities for everyone, even if you don't have a classic, a formal or an informal education in that area. And that was a tremendous lesson. It was like getting an MBA, both in business and also in entrepreneurship and startups. And then I took that, and during that period running that in San Diego till we sold it in 2004, I met a young man named Aaron Blum. He was introduced to me by a guy that worked for me named Kevin Dillon at financialaid.com. And Aaron was starting a little company recycling electronics. And by the time we sold financialaid.com, Aaron then came to us. We were very close friends at the time. And he said, listen, can you do the same thing for my little recycling company that you did for the .com? And Kevin and I talked among ourselves, and we studied the electronic waste business, David. And what we realized back in 2003 and 4 was that electronic waste back then was the fastest growing solid waste stream in the world. And it looked like the trend was going to continue to make it keep growing. So we made a deal with Aaron where we closed down his San Diego location, got rid of the name, and reopened in Fresno, California after we sold financialaid.com with a brand new name, ERI, Electronic Recyclers
Mm.
International. And we just put our heads down and we started working again. And again, David, we didn't know this business. We knew, we wanted to do something that was good for the environment. That was a holdover theme in my life from my father's windmill company, knowing that it's a good feeling every day, not just to make a paycheck, but to make the world a better place. That's number one. Number two, we realized also there was no formal industry. It was just mom and pop scrapyards around North America. That if we formalize it, just like we did with financialaid.com, we democratized the student lending world by putting that online. We were going to democratize e-waste recycling by professionalizing it and then taking it on the road. And that's what we did. We started in Fresno, put our heads down, worked really hard. And then before you knew it, 20 years goes by, and we're about 21, 22 years into this now, David. And we're the largest company in North America. We have 9 locations, about 1,000 employees, and we recycle about 20 million pounds of electronic waste every month. And that feels really good.
And for listeners in Australia, 20 million pounds, let's see if I can quickly do a conversion here. It's probably something like 10,000 tons a year, something like that. Does that sound right?
A month. That's a
A
month. That's a
month.
month. You're
Yeah,
exactly
right.
right. That
Wow.
is, you're right. That is the conversion, but that is a month, and it's a lot. It's a lot of electronics, and we're
Yeah.
just hitting it's a drop in the bucket, David. I wish I could tell you, hey, we started this business, we built it to 9 locations, and we've eradicated the problem. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, David, the problem has outgrown us. It grew faster than we could ever grow the company. And e-waste today is not only the fastest growing solid waste in the world still, it's now the fastest growing solid waste stream by an order of magnitude of 2 to 4 times the second fastest growing waste stream, which is post-consumer single-use plastic.
Right.
So it's as you and I know, electronics have become ubiquitous to our lives. We have all this one, you and I are talking today over over our computers and Zoom and all this wonderful technology. And we all have wearables on us, and we drive our EV cars, which are basically computers on wheels, and the Internet of Things have taken over. and it's made for a world full of electronics, but it's also made for a world full of opportunity for companies like us.
So true. And just for listeners who aren't familiar with the space, when when we look at e-waste being the number one waste product, as you say, by 2 or 4 times, what is the big concern with waste? And if we're not recycling it as it builds up, like what are the scenarios and the concerns that come with the future with that amount of waste piling up?
Yeah, the real problem is this. Historically, David, this stuff has been put in landfills around the world or been thrown in lakes, rivers, or been burned just to get to the precious metals, which burning it creates toxicity in the air because the plastic is absolutely toxic if you burn the plastic off of the electronics. When you put it in a landfill, unfortunately, most landfills have liners. And once it gets rained or any type of moisture gets into it, the liners get holes, the liners leak. So then the mercury, the lead, the cadmium, the arsenic, the beryllium that are all contained in some amount or another in old electronics will leach into our ground supply, which will leach into our water supply,
Mm,
which will, of course, then leach into our vegetation, animals, and eventually make it back to us. And that's unnecessary. Here's the beautiful story, part of the story, David. When you keep electronics above ground in any country, wherever they're used, and there's a responsible recycler there. And I'm here to tell you there's responsible recyclers like ERI in Australia, in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in the UAE, and in North America here in the United States. When you keep these materials above ground and responsibly recycle them, all the commodities that are contained therein can go back into the circular economy. So let's look at electronics. What comes out of electronics? What's the biggest commodities? Shredded steel, shredded plastic, shredded aluminum, copper, and then you have the trace metals, gold, lead, and silver. All those materials can go back to smelters and go back into the circular economy. And
mm,
pretty much, besides 1 or 2% of the gross weight, all of it goes and gets reused again, and everyone wins. The environment wins. You create jobs. You have these materials going back into new materials, and also these huge carbon offsets because you're saving massive energy from drilling and mining to go get this material out of the ground that you don't have to mine unnecessarily.
yeah. We actually had a previous guest, Ryan Swenson, who's the CEO of Seconomy, and there's a business here in Australia, Officeworks, John, which is a pretty big business, and they're the biggest supplier to offices and schools. For when school time comes, all the kids are out at Officeworks buying their pens and pencils and rulers, etc. So Seconomy was actually a business that came out of Officeworks and it became a separate entity. Ryan used to be an executive at Officeworks and was then appointed as CEO. And they're a circular economy business. And their total focus is it's a bit different to ERI, but it's about taking stuff that would otherwise end up in waste. And it's not just e-waste, it can be office furniture and fit outs and all that sort of thing, all that stuff that would otherwise go to landfill. They take that and they refurbish, and they do refurbish printers and phones and that sort of thing. But as I understand, something which you guys do is it sounds like you actually melt down the raw materials. Are you melting the metals down and giving it back, or does that happen in a separate part of the process?
It's a great question. We have strategic partners that invested in us that sit on our board of directors that actually do that. So I'll give you our three strategic partners. A company called LSM&M out of South Korea, second largest copper and precious metal smelter in the world, owned by the
Mm,
Koo family. The Koo family is the owners and founders of LG Electronics. So they
right.
take back all of our copper and our precious metals, and they do that. Alcoa, the famous brand Alcoa, the aluminum brand Alcoa,
Mm,
150-year-old company. They sit on our board of directors. They invested in us, and they take back our aluminum. And last but not least, a gentleman named JB Straubel, who was a founder of Redwood Materials. JB is the co-founder of Tesla. He
mm.
sits on our board of directors, and they take back all our lithium-ion batteries and they smelt them down. And then they extract all the metals from those, the black mass, the copper, the nickel, the cobalt, and they sell that back into the EV marketplace. So again, it's a win on every level. But no, we don't own the smelters ourselves. Our partners own the smelters. They sit on our board of directors. They're investors, and all of it goes back to the circular economy. Everybody wins.
That is really cool, and what an impressive board of directors. You guys
Yeah,
have, I
a
mean,
very
it's
lucky
one.
guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we've seen on this show is the successful leaders attract high quality people around them, both on their executive team, in their delivery team and on the board. And yeah, you should. A smart leader will gather a whole bunch of people around them who are smarter than they are at many things.
100%. Not only smarter, but have spheres of influence and spheres of knowledge that they don't have. And
Yeah.
you don't make a board of directors of people that think and look just like you, because then why don't you just wake up and look at the mirror every day and just talk to yourself then? Because that's
Mm,
really all it becomes. You want to have diversity and inclusivity of all different types of people from all different types of backgrounds. It makes decision making, it makes the vision, it makes everything richer. It makes the innovation opportunities
mm.
richer because you have a lot of different and diverse ideas and thoughts that go into the running of a company then. And it's not all about you. It's not all about the one leader. Like you said, great leaders surround themselves with other great people.
Absolutely. I want to, before we move to looking at where is ERI going, which I want to make sure we leave some time for in terms of the vision for the future. I want to understand more and help listeners to understand what what really is the mission of ERI. I mean, I know that tangibly you've got your recycling e-waste. You've talked about the problem of how that can leak into the soils and put essentially there's a poisoning issue there, and it's a really significant issue and a really beautiful focus to work on reducing that. But as you say, you wish you could say you're recycling all the e-waste, 10,000 tons. I think you said it's a drop in the ocean. What is
Right.
the ultimate mission? Is it to? I mean, because it reminds me a bit of Ray Anderson's Interface, who we actually interviewed the Australian managing director of Interface, the world's largest carpet manufacturer, and Ray, he's passed away now, but he developed Mission Zero, and then they're now Mission Take Back, so they've achieved Mission Zero, and they're just about now teaching other organisations how to get their emissions to net zero. And is it about just doing the best you can, or is there a bold, ambitious goal of we do want eventually to hit, zero waste? What's the ultimate vision, and what's the practical aspect of how that's going now?
We're tackling one part of the waste stream. The nice thing, David, the truth of the matter is we were very, very early. We were, if you were to look at different businesses and say, what would you like, in other industries? Let's look at the internet business. Do you want to, we were the MySpace of our industry. We should have
Mm,
gone away a long time ago because we were too early. The world wasn't ready for it, but we hung in and just kept our head down and focused and educated people that you got this is the right thing to do. People, although they understood it was the right thing, David, they didn't. It's a whole new line item that they have to pay for, and people aren't interested and excited to wake up every morning and learn that their business or their organization has another line item that they have to pay for. But then when they understood all the negative things that could happen, the outcomes that could happen if e-waste is mishandled. First, we have the environmental ones that you and I just talked about, the stuff that gets into the environment into our rivers or lakes and has no business getting there. But what we also need to talk about is privacy. The cybersecurity trend has taken off since 2004 with the advent of Palantir and now all the biggest cybersecurity companies in the world. And so when you think about your old electronics, think about all of your family and organizational business that's contained on your laptops, on your tablets, on your desktops, on your cell phones. If that was to get into the wrong people's hands, and not
mm,
saying everybody's a wrong person, but there are people that mine our old electronics for the information more than
mm,
anything else, that would be a catastrophe for a family. It would be a catastrophe for a business. And this happens on a regular basis. So, one of the things we also do is not only protect the environment, we protect the privacy of people, of organizations, of government entities. Homeland Security is a client of ERI. Department of Justice is a client of ERI. The biggest defense contractors and airlines are clients of ERI, as are the biggest financial institutions. because the environment is important to them, yes, but also cybersecurity. If they're going to be
Yeah.
a sustainable business and a resilient business, they also have to protect themselves from allowing their trade secrets and their clients' information to get in the wrong people's hands. And that's another thing that we destroy and take care of on a regular basis and protect.
Yeah. And that's really cool to hear. And I've seen that on the ERI website, the cybersecurity aspect. I want to probe a bit deeper because there's a principle here, and it relates to leadership, and it relates to philosophy, and it relates to people's worldview, and it sort of links with the interface example I gave. You know they haven't achieved zero, a perfectly net neutral environmental impact for
Right.
everyone and all the businesses they work with. Another more recent example, one of my clients is Sea Shepherd Australia, and they're part of the global Sea Shepherd operation. They're kind of these maverick rebels who will drive their ships out and literally get between the whaling ships and the whales, the Japanese whaling ships. And one of their big
I've seen
successes,
them.
they have successfully ended whaling in the Southern Ocean, the Australian operation, and that's a pretty big win in the International Marine Court. So I was at a fundraising event for them recently, and the CEO was a client of mine, and some other executives there. And at this event, the CEO spoke, Jeff Hansen, and a couple of other supporters, and the chairman, Peter Hammerstead, Captain Peter Hammerstead. And what I really picked up, and this is the question I have for you, John, is they are aware that in terms of removing illegal plastics from the ocean, stopping illegal fishing, ending whaling, all these priority areas that Sea Shepherd focuses on, they they've got some great wins. They're doing some awesome work, but they're aware there's a huge amount that goes unchecked, and there's a lot of enormous waste in terms of fish species being killed, and in vast numbers that are totally unnecessary in illegal fishing. There's marine reserves where poachers are coming and destroying populations, and that's going unchecked. um, the efforts to stop illegal shark culling, a drop in the ocean, but they wake up positive every day and they charge out and do it. And that's what I picked up is there's this big problem of, there's all these things which aren't being done, which are continuing to be a problem and actually growing in scale, but they wake up every day and they go and do their bit, and they're happy. And they see that we're doing a beautiful thing, and we're going to keep doing it, and nothing's going to stop us. We don't let these other aspects get us down. So that's where I want to throw back to you. I mean, is it the same kind of thing philosophically, or how do you see what you're doing compared with the bigger problem and the scale of that and the
Da-
impact?
David, you couldn't have brought up a better and more elegant analogy. Honest to gosh, that's literally exactly how I think about it. If you were to lay in bed every day and say, okay, I have ERI, I built this thing with my partners, we have 9 locations, we're doing all this to 10,000 tons a month. But man, the whole world's on fire. Climate change isn't moving fast enough. There's so many other problems. We haven't even tackled the entire e waste problem. I wouldn't get out of bed any day. But I'm of the exact mind that you just brought up. Hey, I'm going to do the best and be my best and make ERI the best it can be every day. That's my job. And my job is to be better and to get better and to make ERI better every day, to evolve it and not sit on our laurels, not sit on our leadership position, and to inspire other young people. I encourage people. Hey, you think this is a good story? We're in the top of the second inning, maybe the bottom of the first. Come, you start an e-waste company, young man, young woman. There's plenty to do all around the world, and or start a company that cleans water, or fixes the single-use plastic issue, or any other issues that you see out there that are scalable, commercializable, and can be profitable, but still also make a difference in the world. And let's join hands and do it together, because fixing the world, we didn't destroy this world alone. No one company, no one robber baron, no one billionaire, or no one organization destroyed the environment and brought us to the brink of that we have with the climate issues that we have today. We're going to have to join hands, inspire and encourage each other to work together in the sectors that we are in, and the sectors that we know, and the sectors that we need tackling, and make the world better together. Because unfortunately and fortunately, the environment's only one. So if there's a tragedy today on the environment in Australia, that affects us in California. That will make its way to California. Some portion of that pollution will make its way here and impact us. The same thing happens in Asia, in Europe, in North America. We're one and together. So this battle is one that we're fighting together, and we all have to find our corner of it and then put our head down and work on it and make and just try to make it better every day. It's not going to be a perfect process. There's going to be fits and starts, there's going to be failures, but we can't quit. And we just have to be celebrate the wins and learn from the failures and keep moving forward. And that's how I get up and that's how I lead this place every day.
That is very cool to hear. And I love this topic because it's to me a philosophical topic. It's what's the philosophy you've come to in your journey for anyone that, even against apparent, significant odds, you wake up every day and as you said, John, you do your best. You strive to make things better.
Hmm.
If we had more time, I get the sense there's some very interesting territories to explore around this issue from a philosophical perspective, and that perhaps goes beyond the scope of our conversation today. But it's a really fascinating topic.
And I celebrate clients like you have. I've watched them on my television, and I've watched them get in between the whalers and try to get rid of all those bad practices. And it's our job to celebrate them and encourage them and cheer them on. And that's what we're supposed to be doing for one another. David, unfortunately, from the greed is good generation of the 80s, back then so many people were meant to think, millions of people who were interested in being an entrepreneur or a capitalist were meant to think that it's a zero sum world. And it's actually the opposite. It's a world of abundance because David's succeeding doesn't mean I'm failing. Because one of my competitors is succeeding doesn't mean ERI is failing. There's so much to do out there. We could all succeed together, succeed financially and also environmentally, socially, and otherwise. It's not a world, it's not a zero sum world. It's actually the reverse. It's a world of abundance, and there's so many opportunities out there. You know how many times, David, I go and speak at MBA classes or colleges or other institutions, and people raise their hand and say, "Well, I love your story of financialaid.com or ERI, but all the best ideas have been done." And I'm like, I wish I was 21 again. I've got a list that's the longest list ever of businesses I could start today that can be profitable, scalable, and not only make money, but also make a difference. There's so many things out there for your listeners and to roll up their sleeves and do if that's what they really want to do. And they can make a lot more than just a paycheck. They can make the world a better place.
Absolutely. And for further examples, please do also check out our interview with the managing director of Interface Australia, Rob Coombs, who actually retired shortly after our interview with him, but that's earlier, where he talks about very much the same topic. I mean, I totally agree with you, John. And what I'm reminded of a long time ago, I was involved in a charity called Luca Leadership, founded an affiliate of that in Australia, and we used to run a lot of very hands-on, practical leadership team building exercises for young leaders that were clearly going to be up and coming and influential people in their own leadership journey. One of the team tasks, we used to call them, that we ran, there were 4 different groups. Each had a different amount of materials like planks, barrels, ropes, tires. Some teams had lots and lots of materials, others had barely any. And the task was essentially, to build an island using a plank that the whole team could stand on. That was the brief, and the teams were left to their own devices. And it was so interesting to see how the different perspectives, where teams would sort of huddle in and try and make their own thing with the resources. And the team with the most would often celebrate and quickly make their bridge and then watch everyone else suffering. And of course, there was an opportunity there for all the teams to see it that the task is for everyone to build a bridge successfully, not just one team. And of course, the review afterwards drew out those insights, whatever happened. And sometimes people would share resources and sometimes they wouldn't. But it was really interesting. It really drew out that collaboration versus competition, and how what is the ultimate goal here? Is it to win against another entity, or is it actually to achieve a higher outcome and a higher purpose? So you're yeah, totally in alignment with what I've experienced in my own journey.
100%. 100%.
And John, believe it or not, we're quickly moving towards time here, but I just want to finish with, from a leadership perspective, and we use the term evolved leadership on this podcast, whatever that means to you, the word evolved and tying that to leadership. From your rich history of experience with the organizations you've been involved with and now ERI, what would be a top tip or two that you have for listeners who are looking to evolve as leaders in their own journey? I know you've spoken already about the hard work ethic and being the first to arrive,
Yeah.
last to leave,
Yeah.
but what are one or two other tips you'd have to share on the topic of leadership?
Yeah, one thing as I do is I continue to study the great leaders. I don't ever, the quest to learn never ends, and to be a lifelong student is so important for all of us to keep our brains fresh and clear and sharp, but also to keep our skills fresh and sharp. And recently, unfortunately, the brilliant and genius Charlie Munger passed away, and
Mm,
I've just and I'm an owner of his stock. My wife and I, I've owned his stock over 20 years, Berkshire Hathaway. We've been to their conference, but I've just started more recently just reading his book. And even today, I just bought his Poor Charlie's Almanac, and I intend to read that during the holidays. You could always continue to learn. Charlie was 99. I'm 61. How much can
mm,
I learn from his lifetime? It's it's beyond incredible. I've just been enjoying reading everything I can just the last week about him, and I've been a shareholder and for over 20 years, and I've learned a lot about him over the last 20 years. But I realized I don't know enough. So learning, continually learning, and staying a lifelong student is critical. And I want to go back to my favorite thing. When I was young, I didn't have some of my friends and relatives have the ability to remember songs and poems, and that's just not my skill set. My memory to remember that stuff isn't that great. So when I was a very
mm.
young kid, I committed to memory one poem, and it was by my hero back then, Muhammad Ali. And that poem has served me so well, not only in my just in my personal life, but in my leadership life. And it's really a simple poem. It was his shortest poem. This is the poem, David. It goes like this: Me, we. You can't ask people to do things that you won't do yourself. And people are watching more than you ever believe. Your children are watching, your spouse or significant other is watching, and every one of the people that you've been tasked to lead, whether you're just a manager at a company, whether you're a vice president or president at a company, whether you're the owner or the CEO, everybody's watching you. Those who
Yeah.
you think are watching and those who you don't think are watching are watching. So, you have to live the life that you want to embody and that you want people to follow and that what you want your company to be. If you want your company to be X but you're acting like Y, you're not going to get it to X. Even if you message X, but if you act like Y, you're not going to get there. So it all starts with me and keeping my side of the street clean and keeping my journey the right way and always standing in the right direction is really the whole one of the key tenets of leadership. You can't say something and do another. They have to match up.
100%. And that was a really beautiful insight to share to finish. And I love the notion of study the great leaders. And I mean, in the leadership programs we run, we insert, pieces of wisdom from various leaders, but it's something I've loved in my own journey. And I know many leaders don't prioritize doing is taking some time to read the great books like Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. Whatever mentors or leaders, really hit the mark for you, learning about them. The founder of Grameen Bank, Mohammed Yunus, reading about his journey in life and infinite examples. Finding the ones that really float your boat and studying them, as you say, brings enormous
Correct.
benefit.
and also find some leaders that you not necessarily agreed with from what you read about them in the media, and learn the other side. Learn about leaders who you thought were on the other side of what other opinions you have, and find a way to keep an open space to learn about other sides. It's only going to make you a richer person to be able to argue both sides of any important social, political, or business issue of the day. So there's so many great leaders out there, whether they're great coaches from sports, whether they're the great political leaders, as you point out, whether they're the great social leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and so many others, including Winston Churchill. There's so many great leaders. And now Charlie Munger. We've lost a legend. Actually, we've lost numerous legends in one week. In one short week, we lost Sandra Day O'Connor, 93-year-old brilliant woman, first woman on the Supreme Court of the United States. We lost Charlie Munger. We lost Rosalind Carter. And we lost Henry Kissinger. Four of the greatest leaders in American history, in world history, probably. And there's a lot to learn from all of them. We all can learn more, and we all can be better. And if we're better ourselves, we're better leaders ultimately.
So thank you very much for calling that out, John. It's been a big week in the world of leadership. And thank you for honoring those names that you mentioned, those leaders to finish. We're going to put in the show notes obviously the details to direct people towards ERI and for you on LinkedIn if people want to connect and the company page. Is there anything else that you direct listeners to, whether it's articles of interest, resources, books, anything at all that you'd recommend for people's own journey of evolution?
One other thing I have to say, we all can't sit and read quietly every day. Reading is very important, but we all want to be healthy and all want to be our best also physically and mentally. So I find another great hack and another great way to keep taking in knowledge and learning is I listen to a lot of books, audiobooks, and podcasts. The right type of podcasts and audiobooks can be also great resources. So when I'm in the gym lifting weights, I'm listening. I'm not just listening to music willy nilly. I'm listening to some of the great leaders out there who've written amazing books. Same thing when I'm on a walk or a run, I'm listening. Same thing if I'm in the car, instead of using that as dead time, I either if I'm listening to great thoughts and great wisdom. There's a lot of ways to take it in. It's not only anymore a unilateral way of books. And keep your mind and ears open for everything. There's lots of ways to take in wisdom that can help you be a better leader.
Well, thank you so much, John. And it's been really, really cool to speak with you today and hear about your journey, leading up to ERI, what ERI does, and the awesome impact that the organization has, and also the philosophical aspect of waking up and doing your best, despite, what might be going on around you. Thanks so much for your generosity today. And it's been really great to have you on the show.
Grateful for the time. Thank you for having me. I wish you continued success and good health in your podcast and all your endeavors, David, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, John.